so dark. In the beginning, it is always dark. What is that?
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about this movie called The Neverending Story. And this is probably one of the most profound, meaningful movies I think I've ever watched. And it's only, 30 plus years later, after I saw it for the first time. I think I was like 8. I believe the movie came out in 1984. And I'm finally grasping the meaning behind this movie. I'm reading a lot of old books that deal with the spirit and consciousness and myth and old religions. Specifically, this book by Erich Neumann called The Great Mother. I also read the book, The Neverending Story. It's by a gentleman named Michael Ende. Or End, I don't know how you would say that. It's a German novel. And the novel is totally different than the book. I strongly recommend it. It's way, way deeper and a mind bender. Especially, I guess, in the first quarter, because the movie The Neverending Story is only like this much out of that thick book. So this has some very deep meaning, and the meaning goes beyond even the Christian realm, but it does tell the hero's story. And if you're not, or is it the hero's journey? Sorry, if you're not familiar with the hero's journey, it's something that Joseph Campbell posited a while ago. It's the concept of the hero. The hero starts out in the normal, gets called to adventure, goes down, actually dies in some way, form or another, and comes back reborn with a gift for society. That's the idea, anyway. So that does exist in this Neverending Story, but I want to kind of unpack this for you to get the transcendent meaning that we get out of myths and stories, because, there's some weird stuff going on here, and it just like all, maybe not Disney, I forget who made this really, but all movies with weird elements, there's something that draws you to them. If there was nothing that drew you to them, you wouldn't pay attention to them. Like Pinocchio, for example, it's about a wooden boy. Like, what do you care? The thing about describing ideals is they're infinite in description. So I'm not going to try to nitpick every single bit of symbology that's in this movie, but I am going to try to go through the major parts that are mapped onto man's psychology and man's myth and the ideal and the unconscious and the conscious. I'm going to try to play with those a little bit. So in the Neverending Story, it starts out with, you see Bastian and his relationship to his father, and it's kind of cold. You can tell his mother passed away because he had a dream regarding his mother. And he's like, you need to put your feet on the ground. Let go of this stuff. And so he's calling him to kind of separate himself from the myth. It's a precursor toward the nothing, which comes later. But Bastian's kind of low in confidence. He's, we find out a little later, he likes to read a lot. His introduction to the social circle of his friends is, well, he's probably at the bottom because they're all bullying him and picking on him, throwing him into a trash can. And then he runs and hides in a bookstore. And he finds this old man there, surrounded by books. Myths are everywhere. And he apparently, Bastian and him have a conversation. And he ends up stealing this massive book called The Neverending Story, which has a picture of the Oran on it, which is instead of the Ouroboros is it's a picture of a snake eating its own tail. It's a symbol of the unconscious. It's two snakes eating each other's tails. In the book, that's very significant. Here, we're just going to keep it with like the Ouroboros kind of thing, where a snake eating its own tail. The idea behind that is the unconscious. That is what birthed everything. That is it's self-sufficient. It desires nothing. It just goes about its own thing. It's self-replicating. Everything's efficient. Nothing is new. Everything is the same. So there's no qualms, no hiccups. Every infant desires to go back into this state, right? This is a state of prime emotion, prime feeling. And feelings, you want them to, I guess we kind of do want them to exist. But usually the negative ones we want to flee away from. We want to slumber. We want to sleep. Tool sings a song about this. Why cannot we not be sober? Why can't we just drink forever? I just want to start this over. But the desire is to be free of pain, go back to the unconscious. Because there's no vision for the future. It's all about what you feel. So anyway, that's on the front of the book. Bastian takes a book. He runs to class, but turns out he gives up the scholastic for a pursuit of a myth. And I think all young men go through this at some point. You, especially around 13, at least the guys I know, around the age of 12, 13, around puberty, you start to bounce yourself off the world. You try to figure out what you're about, and you try to see what the world is made of, see what you're made of. The masculine struggle, I would think, is heavily external. The feminine struggle is internal, because obviously, as a woman, life comes from you. And the life that comes from you, well, it's mortal as well. So are you just birthing something to die? That's a heck of a simple and harsh way of putting it, but that is the struggle. Like, everybody dies in the end. There's nothing that can be said beyond that, except for the hints in the mythic and the religious. So if you are pure materialism, like, that's where you stop. There is no myth, there is no ideal, there's no future. Like, even the future is kind of a mythic aspect. We don't know if tomorrow will come. We're pretty sure it will, but absolute knowledge is not going to be something we have about that. Like, who knows? Maybe a sunflare will hit us. So the word Orin means glory or golden. It's something that's highest. And it's also the protection symbol that Atreyu wears eventually. But when Bastian starts reading the book, there's a meeting of mythical creatures. They're talking about the nothing. And as far as I could tell, nothing is the separation of the abstract and the material. Because, and I'm going to be talking about this movie as if you've already seen it before. So if you haven't seen it before, please go see it. So the mythic Fantasia, and this gets flushed out more with the conversation with Gamork, is tethered to the reality. It's based on something else. It's based on the real, whatever that is in their world. So the fantastic and the real, they're tethered together. So what happens if you break them free of each other? If you listen to his father's advice, you've got to get your feet on the ground. The ideal goes away. They're separated. They don't communicate anymore. And that's terrible. You need a vision to move forward. You need something in the Judeo-Christian worldview. This is loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. It's purpose, goodness. Goodness and purpose go hand in hand. The question is, what's the purpose? And whose purpose is it? Maybe you can find the answer in Buddha. Maybe you can find the answer in Krishna, Muhammad, Christ. But the purpose is associated with a type of consciousness, not the unconscious, because the unconscious doesn't see into the future. That's the conscious job, the mythic. So anyway, they're talking about going to see the Empress. Now, the Empress is a symbol of the world, of the Ouroboros. And this is a very, very old symbol, but it pops up. It's timeless. And the reason I say it's timeless is it pops up in ancient cultures all over the place. Like anywhere from like 1,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago. The symbol of the snake eating itself. It's the giant round. It's the egg of the cosmos that gives life to everything. Who knows? Part of the Big Bang. But it's the idea that from nothingness, something came about. And that's our life. And a lot of I would say just about all the old religions were just that, the matriarchal religions. Now, you got to be careful with confusing that with the role of women themselves in super ancient cultures. That's not the point. The point is the process of birth and life and death. Those are housed in the feminine realm. The same with the mythic stories that we have, even the ones we tell ourselves today. Anywhere from Inside Out to Moana. It's the chaos, it's the waters. It's the potential, it's life, it's death, it's potential and permanence. Now, is there anything besides that? Well, like I said, this story kind of addresses that a good bit as it can. Even though it's 41 years old? Holy moly, dude. Anyway, so as these mythical creatures go toward the Empress, who is the pinnacle central embodiment of the feminized world of the mythic, they find out she's dying. And the only thing that can save her is a hero. And the hero has to be a young boy. And this is very true in a lot of cultures, especially the old stories. I'm going to read you something out of The Great Mother by Eric Neumann, because this is something that's echoed into a lot of history. It's even echoed in the Christian story with Mary, which is super cool. It's an echo thereof. I believe that at least in Christianity, that's when things started turning into the real. Christ was a real person that existed. Everything else was like a precursor to that. It was like an echo. It was like a hint of that. And then the hero stories we have now point back to the self-sacrificial hero that was the first one in reality, born of God and born of man, which was Christ. So here's the element that's echoed throughout our ancient past that's also in this story, the Neverending Story. With the birth of her son, the woman accomplishes the miracle of nature, which gives birth to something different from itself and antithetical to itself. Moreover, the divine son is totally new, not only as to sex, but also in quality. Not only does he engender, while she conceives and bears, he is also light in contrast to her natural darkness, motion in contrast to her static character. Thus the woman experiences her power to bring forth light and spirit, to generate a luminous spirit that, despite all changes and catastrophes, is enduring and immortal. So that's the ability to bring forth life. Come on, cat. You just jumped down 2 seconds ago, buddy. You want to sit back again? It's within her, but it is not her. That's the birthing property. That's you give life. Life is inside of women. Women are at the top of the hierarchy as far as creation goes in the Judeo-Christian worldview, but that doesn't mean they are the be-all, end-all of authority, because they are a representative thereof. The Christian myth, if you want to call it that, the concept is man and woman existed, they had the image of God on them. But what they wanted was they wanted the real thing. They didn't want to remain just an image. They wanted to have knowledge thereof, of good and evil, and participate in that process, whatever that looked like. So you guys probably know the story of Sleeping Beauty, where she pricks her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and goes to sleep. At least that's where the story goes. I'm not going to rehash the entirety of it right now. But that's the idea of the unconscious, of feeling, of the embracing of potential. Like, there's too much. There's just too much. There's nothing is segmented whatsoever. It's all static. It's all white noise. Well, in that, patterns start to emerge. But as it stagnates, as it is not reordered, as it is not rejuvenated, chaos itself disperses. And so she requires a hero. She requires not necessarily a son, but something that comes from the feminine, that's light and enduring. And so she, in the book anyway, she asks for Atreyu. And she does in the movie as well. Atreyu is pretty cool. The name means son of all in the Germanic, but if you look back further in the Greek, it's a fearless king. And so that's somebody to look up to for somebody like Bastian. Like somebody who is fearless, when Bastian was just spending a good bit of its time running away from 3 boys. So she sends him on a quest, but she sends him on a quest via an avatar, and it's an older gentleman. So it's like the tribal leader. For her sake, you must do this quest. And this is, again, the time, at least in that age, where you, as a man, as a boy, you bounce yourself off the world, you try to see what you're made of, and you try to look for purpose. At least that's kind of what you find or stumble into. And usually the older religions, and we even have some now that still exist, they put you through a certain trial. Once you go through this trial, you emerge a man. You've done it. And it has to be bestowed upon you by an elder. So that's why I think it makes sense that a masculine figure has to give him the quest specifically. But he's doing it for her sake. Because women judge men. And he needs to learn what it is to be a man by going through some authentic trials, maybe. So Atreyu just goes everywhere. He's on his horse Artex, here and there and everywhere. And eventually he ends up in the swamps of sadness. And why the heck does he do that? Well, when you've gone every possible place you can think of and nothing works, you're going to be frustrated beyond all belief. Especially if you're in like a relationship with somebody and nothing you do works. You're going to get depressed. You're going to get weak. And that's when you're in the swamp of sadness. And he gets weak to the point where he loses his horse. A part of him dies, because his horse roughly was a part of him. And animals are roughly unconscious. I'm not going to say they don't have personalities, but they're they have an inability to see the future to a certain extent. They can see patterns, sure, but not nearly to the extent that a conscious man or woman can. So he gives into despair because he cannot see hope in the mythic in the future. The horse just gives up. He doesn't have anything to go on. In the book, the horse talks to Atreyu. So I'm kind of going to leave that out right now, but it's super moving. And Atreyu is the Orin. The Orin is the protector. It's the protection. It's the middle line between order and chaos. The snakes biting their own tails. So he has that kind of protection. He's going to stay in the middle no matter how ordered or how chaos things get. He'll be able to walk that line. Given to him by the feminine, because she is his chosen hero. He is her chosen hero. And it is his job to rise to the occasion to find a cure for her. In the book, I'm going to refer to this a couple more times, but not too much. They tell him what she needs right away, which is a name. He doesn't figure that out until like the very last second in the movie. But they did a very good job turning this into a movie, I think. There's still a lot of great symbolism, and whoever decided to make this movie, like, good for them. So in the midst of despair and darkness, with a loss of part of yourself, which is the horse, his transportation, his friend, he finds Morla. Morla is this giant turtle in the middle of the swamp of sadness, and she is the cool intellect. She's separated from emotion and from youth. And you can tell this because she's not sneezing, and then when she meets Atreyu, she's sneezing like crazy because she says she's allergic to youth. And nothing surprises her. Nothing gives her an emotional response. The only thing that Atreyu says to her is like, "You'll die too." And Morla's like, "Oh, that'll be something." But she's still unfazed. And then ultimately she gets to the point where, like, go to the Southern Oracle. You know, you need something in a religious totem, because obviously your intellect, the epitome of intellect, is just not going to do it for you, or at least it can't. Maybe you just can't do it for you, which is the case. So he says okay, and he keeps wandering around, still wallowing in the swamp of sadness. So at this point, Atreyu lost a part of himself. He's gone to every possible place he can think of. He's even talked to his inner intellect, devoid of emotion, and that's given him no answers. And in the midst of this, you got Gamork. Gamork is a malevolence. So not only do you have despair, because nothingness, the separation of the material and the abstract, of the myth and reality, is death, because there's no more mingling between the two, which sparks life. So you have the existential crisis, which is the nothing. You also have malevolence that wants to kill him on top of that. And he is at his weakest, and this is a Nietzsche quote, like when you're weakest and tired, old, already defeated demons will rise up again to fight you. And you're like, man, I already beat this thing. So Atreyu, perhaps he didn't have a lot of malevolent forces to deal with when he was on the plains. But certainly at this moment he is not prepared for it. And luckily gets rescued by a luck dragon, who picks him up and carries him exactly where he needs to go. Isn't that something? So he's at the Southern Oracle now, and he's healing, and who knows how long he's been there, and does it really matter? Does time exist in the mythic realm? Myths are kind of like an eternal process. Stories told from generation to generation. So he wakes up at the Oracle, and he meets a husband and a wife. One is a scholar, the other is a mystic. So she has her spells and her brews and her medicines. So that's the old feminine character, the representative of the old feminine character, and the old masculine character. Because, man, we lose our muscles as we age. This is how it is. Unless you have sheer willpower, you gain them. I think Joshua did that in the Bible. He's 80 years old, still fighting in the front lines. But knowledge is something you can pass on. So Atreyu gets the blessing of both the mystic and the scholar before he goes in the 3 trials. And the 3 trials here, again, totally different than the book. But I think they do a very good job putting it on screen. First trial is just with 2 sphinxes, and he gets to see a knight try to walk between them. The sphinx opens his eyes, and the scholar says something like, you have to be your true self, true to yourself, authentic person, then you can pass through them. So that's like the judgmental eyes of the feminine. They're looking at you for confidence. Because women judge men, like all the time. And they can judge you, and it's very debilitating for men. Because men don't have life in them. They have to seek it out. They engender life. They help it grow. We are not intimately part of the creation process. We are in proximity to it, but not as intimate as woman, as Eve is. So if a woman rejects you, it's like saying, stealing from Jordan Peterson, you're okay as a friend, but I see no reason for your DNA to propagate into the future. And so he has to pass through the judgmental eyes of the feminine. On his way there, he gets distracted. He's trying to be his true self, trying to be authentic, confident. But then nihilism kicks in again. It's with the mask that flies open and reveals the burnt face, death itself. Like, we all die in the end anyway, so what's the point? So nihilism kind of like gives him a smack upside the head. But he has a vision for the future again. So he runs forward. He's trying to bounce himself off the world. This is, I think, one of the motivating factors that comes with youth. You're trying to figure out what to do, and sometimes you just do things without reason. And it pushes you forward, and when you do that, you figure out what calls to you. The second trial is a trial of reflection. So it's kind of interesting that it's all snowy there. It's cold. But in the reflection, what Atreyu sees, which is supposed to chill the heart, and supposed to make him run screaming, is not himself. It's Bastian. The fear that Atreyu sees is he's not a hero. He's just a little boy cowering in a room, reading about heroes and wishing he could be one. But I think Atreyu passes this pretty masterfully, obviously, because he's like, no, I'm already doing the things. Like, that reflection in the mirror, that might be my fear, but I embrace it. Sure, I'm a little child at heart. Every one of us has that in us. But I embrace it, and I want to move on and be transformed. The third challenge is the decaying feminine. And this is, obviously he's talking to the oracle now, but he's watching her crumble. She's the one who tells him the Empress needs a new name. But it has to be done from a transcendent source, something outside of the mythic, something outside of Fantasia. And when she receives that source, she'll be rejuvenated. And then things start to crumble right in front of him. And I think that's best housed in marriage. Like, if you're going to pursue the feminine, there will be decay. Like, till death do you part, right? It's in nature for men to go after youth and fertility. And so when people age, then you're staying with them. I mean, women do the same thing. But, men can have kids forever. Women, you hit a cap and then that's it. And maybe for the better, because if you can still have a baby when you're like 90, I mean, that's just going to destroy you. Both of you will die. It's the idea that the masculine and the feminine stay together the entire time. It's the chaos and the order that stick together. It's the middle line. And so when you're married, you hold yourself accountable to what makes the marriage work, the unity between the masculine and the feminine image, which is I think the image of order and chaos that interact together to produce consciousness, conscious life that continues. And out of the mingling of order and chaos comes life. And then you stay together even after life shows up, so you can guide life even further on. So they talk to the Southern Oracle after seeing the decaying feminine, and he attempts to fly out of Fantasia because humans are outside of Fantasia. And it turns out you can't fly out of myth, just like you and I cannot fly out of this reality and just kind of beam our ways to heaven, whatever that looks like. But attention, and this is very much a feminine fate, cannot be forced. It must be drawn. So this is the whole point of the story, the Neverending Story, the trials that Atreyu is going through. There's something about pain and loss, tears, joy, in pursuit of something better, like we read about before in that book. The hero that, regardless of what happens, still stands strong. So through all of his flights, Atreyu reaches the Sea of Possibilities. And this is the sea of infinite potential. And so this is what happens when you don't know what to do. You can do anything. Anything's a lot of things to do. So you just don't know what to do. The sea of possibilities, like, that would be considered theoretically the edge of myth. But then you have to start, once you keep traveling on the sea, the myth, I guess, would solidify and become things forever. But when you stand there and look at it, when you look at infinity, you look at potential, when you try to let your mind wander, when you try to think of something, you have to start putting boundaries on what you're thinking about. What are you going to think about? Anything. Well, anything is too much. How about a dog? You know what I mean? You put boundaries on what you think about and potential. So they're at the sea of possibilities, and it's too much. It's chaos. And the nothing is there, because the nothing is in chaos. If it's only chaos and there's no order there, so if they're just staring at the sea of possibilities, well, he loses the Orin and his luck dragon. Atreyu falls into the waters, and he is up on the beach. Now his journey is more authentic than it's ever been, because he doesn't have the protection of the symbol that keeps him in the line. He doesn't have the transcendent luck from the dragon that will just save him from anything. And he walks into this little, like, cave castle area, and he sees pictures of himself and the various trials he's been in. As far as I can tell, this is Atreyu reflecting on his journey. And as he's reflecting on his journey, he meets the embodiment of malevolence, the Gomorrah. And he willfully confronts it. His vision has to be so good and so sharp, because he doesn't give up his vision even when he loses the Orin. He keeps going. That he'll confront malevolence in chaos. That is, it's like the worst possible thing you can do. And he kills malevolence. But it could have gone either way. Like, it had to be a real struggle. So his reward for risking having authentic risk and risking himself and enduring is that he has both the luck dragon and the Orin returned to him, which is really super cool. But the nothing still wins. Like, death still comes for you. This is the existential dread. Is there something beyond the nothing? Is there something beyond the separation thereof? Well, his vision is so true, he prays to the Orin, roughly speaking, that even in death, even the nothing wins. He has to confront malevolence in chaos. His vision is still so strong, he still looks for the ivory tower amidst the stars when there's nothing there. So he finds the ivory tower, and he enters to speak to the Empress, and she looks happy to see him, but then she's like, why are you so sad? Because the hero can sometimes be quite damaged by the journey. Even though he continues onward, you carry scars on you. Scars have a memory. Memory has scars. You could look at it both ways. A physical scar on your body, you will see it, and you'll be drawn to images. Either like, that was cool, I did that being a hero, or more often times than not, that's a scar of me being really dumb. But it still has memories attached to it, and this is oh my gosh, it's from the Dark Crystal. Brains forget, but scars remember. And I thought that was a really profound quote. So they talk with each other. Atreyu pleads to her, like, I've failed. She's like, no, you succeeded. But like, he succeeded in his failings, because the whole pain that he went through, his trials, is what drew Bastian into the story to continue reading, so that he could now meet the Empress. And Atreyu even falls to the nothing, doesn't get back up. The definition of a hero is you keep getting up, regardless of how much you fall down. So then she starts to pray to something transcendent, which is a human child, somebody who's reading her story. And she cries. And it's hard for me not to tear up when I see that scene. I had to watch this movie, just at least the visuals, a couple times. I have 2 daughters, so a little girl crying for help, man, that hits me right here, man, I'm telling you. So she compels Bastian to act. And so he acts. He rises to the occasion. It's a silly, absurd thing to do. But it's mythic and it's fantastic. It's fantastical. And he calls out Moonchild, if you ever missed that. Because women are more pulled to the lunar. And the concept of the sun is more associated literally with the sun, soul, the light child, like that kind of thing. So, that has a lot more symbolic references, but we'll just leave it there. He names her. It's a reflection of consciousness waking up, seeing the beauty and potential of chaos and ordering it, naming it new, as Adam named Eve. And that's also why Eve had to be born in reality, after Adam, through the Spirit, though the spirit of Eve existed before Adam. And one of the things she says to him while she's screaming out to him is, why don't you do what you dream? Why don't you pursue the mythic? Why don't you do the absurd? Why don't you do the unthinkable? Maybe you can make it happen. Maybe you can move mountains, like Christ said. So he does the absurd. He pursues the myth. And he's rewarded, when he comes back to reality, with a dragon, with the confidence that comes with an ideal. You could say maybe that he's standing up to the bullies now. Now, obviously, in the movie, he's riding a dragon chasing him, which is just funny. But you're embodied by the spirit. For me, it was like Raistlin Majir and Caramon for the Dragonlance. Drizzt Stewart and Artemis in Forgotten Realms. I don't know, John Wick. You know what? You embody a mythic character that's unstoppable. And that gives you something to aim at. That's Christ. No matter how terrible things get, even if I get crucified in front of my mom and I'm innocent and everybody knows it, even if death comes itself, I will still pursue the truth and purpose. And Bastian comes back changed. He's reunited with the mythic. And Fantasia is reborn as something else, as the Moonchild, which are really super cool. And that statement in the beginning, it's always dark, it's a reflection of the movie. It was dark in the beginning. He was chaos. He was bottom of the hierarchy. He didn't know what was going on. He lost his mom. But then, as he went through trials, even vicariously through a mythic character, it built his strength up. And he came back confident. It's a hero's journey. And it's pretty cool. I really like it. And the feminine archetype here, you can see in the concept of birthing the hero. Because he wouldn't be himself if it weren't for the Empress. If it weren't for beauty and potential and the chaos that he started out in. And she saw his light. And she basically, not literally, but through her trials, because women judge men, he became a better version of himself. Someone that could lift him up and in her entire kingdom. And that's a great story for both of them. It's a great story for a prince and a princess. So, hope you enjoy that semi-off-the-cuff interpretation of the Neverending Story. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I wrote a book, by the way. It's a choose-your-own-adventure book if you're interested in that kind of thing. Check it out down below in the description. And I'll see you next time. Take care.
Why is it so dark? In the beginning, it is always dark. What is that? One grain of sand. It is all that remains of my vast empire. Fantasia has totally disappeared? Yes. Then everything's been in vain. No, it hasn't. Fantasia can arise in you. From your dreams and wishes, Bastian. How? Open your hand. What are you going to wish for? I don't know. Then there will be no Fantasia anymore. How many wishes do I get? As many as you want. And the more wishes you make, the more magnificent Fantasia will become. Really?